As the frigid waters of the Southern Ocean surge around the base of the world, only the southern tip of South America interrupts their path. But it isn't an impenetrable barrier. It's a maze of channels and islands. Deep fjords extend far into the interior, letting rich, cold water reach right to the foot of the Andes. The forces that carve these channels begin high in the mountains. Huge glaciers grind their way down from the great Patagonian ice sheet. When the ice sheet was even larger than it is today, these glaciers scoured deep trenches in the rock. The valleys they created filled with the rising waters of the sea. Some were gouged so deep that only just offshore, the bottom is an incredible 120 meters down. This labyrinth of channels is one of the least explored areas on Earth. As the cold water pushes deep into the heart of Patagonia, it brings with it the animals of the Southern Ocean. Like fur seals. Mostly they live on the exposed coast, but wandering young males are drawn into these sheltered fjords by the rich feeding here. They can dive as deep as 170 meters to hunt the sea floor, but they feed mostly at night when the fish come closer to the surface. Large eyes help them see in the dark, and they may also use echolocation. The fjords are often stormy, but they're less exposed than the open ocean, so these fur seals can take advantage of the calm waters to rest. On the edge of the channels are great forests of kelp. This giant seaweed is the fastest growing plant in the world. Its stems can be up to 30 meters long. Like any jungle, the kelp has its predators. These aren't fur seals, but sea lions. They prefer to hunt in these shallower waters, searching for animals hiding amongst the weed. Kelp beds are the rainforests of the sea. From sunlit canopy to shadowy forest floor, they support a wealth of strange creatures. It's an ideal hunting ground for sea lions. Like the rainforest, this is a world that has yet to be fully explored.
On our planet, we have two polar regions, the Arctic, whose name comes from the Greek Arctikos of the north, and the Antarctic, from Antarcticos, opposite of the north. But there is an easier way to remember them if you just remember what surrounds them. The Arctic, situated in the northern hemisphere of our planet, is an ocean entirely surrounded by land. On the other side of the world, the Antarctic is a continent entirely surrounded by ocean. So the Arctic has polar bears but no penguins, and the Antarctic has penguins but no polar bears. Let's talk about the Arctic first. The Arctic region consists of a vast ice-covered ocean surrounded by treeless permafrost. The area can be defined as the region between the Arctic Circle and the North Pole. If you were to stand at the North Pole, everywhere you looked, in all directions, would be south. But standing at the North Pole is difficult to do for very long, because it's in the middle of an ocean covered by constantly shifting frozen sea ice. If you were to fall into the water at the North Pole, you'd fall into water that's 13,980 feet deep. Above the water, average winter temperatures can be as low as -40 degrees Celsius, and the coldest recorded temperature is approximately -68 degrees Celsius. Despite these incredibly harsh conditions, humans have populated areas in the Arctic for thousands of years. Life in the Arctic includes organisms living in the ice, zooplankton and phytoplankton, fish and marine mammals, birds, land animals, plants, and human societies. Okay, what about Antarctica? Antarctica is Earth's southernmost continent, and it contains the geographic South Pole. It's the fifth largest continent on the planet, at nearly twice the size of Australia. Almost 98% of Antarctica is covered by ice at least 1 mile in thickness. Conditions in Antarctica are some of the most extreme in the entire world. On average, it's the coldest, windiest, driest continent, and has the highest average elevation of all the continents. You might think that it snows all the time at the poles, but Antarctica is so dry it's considered a desert, with annual precipitation of only 200 millimeters along the coast, and far less inland. The temperature in Antarctica has reached -89 degrees Celsius. Because it's so harsh and hard to get to, there are no permanent human residents on Antarctica, but anywhere from 1,000 to 5,000 people reside throughout the year at the research stations scattered across the continent. Even the most extreme animals fight for survival, and only cold-adapted organisms survive there, including many types of algae, animals, bacteria, fungi, plants, and protista. But why is Antarctica colder than its northern cousin? Well, first, much of the continent is more than 3 kilometers above sea level, and temperature decreases with elevation. That's why mountaintops have snow on them. Second, remember that the Arctic is really a frozen ocean. The water in the ocean beneath it is warmer than the frozen ground in the Antarctic, and that warmth is transferred through the ice pack. This prevents temperatures in the Arctic regions from reaching the extremes typical of the land surface of Antarctica. Third, the seasons are conspiring against the Antarctic. During the aphelion in July, when the Earth is the farthest away from the Sun, it also happens to be winter in the Antarctic, which creates a double whammy of cold for the southern pole. But despite being inhospitable, the North and South Pole are a big reason why our planet is the way it is. Both of our polar regions are very important climate controllers. They help moderate the temperature in our temperate zones and give us stable weather. As sea ice in the Arctic declines due to climate change and global warming, weather around the globe becomes increasingly more unstable.
When you find a word, click the first and the last letter of the word to make the selection.